say their hopes have been dashed by the central government after a year of an unfulfilled promise of a giant project at the Yaoundé Municipal Lake. They are expressing their frustrations in the course of this newscast. Also in this newscast, inhabitants of Ga, that is Quartier de la Ga in the Nkololu neighborhood of the Douala 2 subdivision are crying. They have been rendered homeless in a large-scale demolition exercise. Several families have been rendered homeless. The people know nowhere to go at a time when the cost of living is unexpectedly high in Cameroon's economic capital city, Douala. A demonstration in the course of this newscast also out of Cameroon. We shall be taking you to the fight between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. The Rwandan president Paul Kagame has his positions as far as the activities of the M23 rebels in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo is concerned. In the streets of Congo's populous city, people are demonstrating, indicating that their neighbor Rwanda has just declared and accepted recognizing another country within the country, the DRC. They say that the activities of the Rwandan president goes away to say that the Rwandan government has recognized the eastern regions of the country as an independent state. Thanks for accepting to be with us, ladies and gentlemen. It is only on Equinoxe that you can get a complete newscast, investigative report on what is happening in Cameroon, out of Cameroon, and out of the African continent. Now, when you promise somebody something, a year after and you don't do it, the person gets angry and it becomes really difficult for the person to trust you again. It is the views of inhabitants of the city of Yaoundé in the streets of the city. They are angry with the central government after announcement of a giant project at the Yaoundé Municipal Lake. 1 year after, nothing has been done on the side of the project. The report is compiled by Equinoxe.
On June 24, 2021, that the Prime Minister laid the foundation stone at the Yaoundé Municipal Lake for a giant project that will be admired by Cameroonians around. Unfortunately, nothing has been done on the site a year after. The place is colonized by grass, leaving President Paul Biya's citizens disappointed. He says they were happy when the government launched this project, hoping to see a magnificent edifice erected here. Nothing significant has been done here. What you see over there started just 2 weeks ago. It is more of a child's play. Many smiled when they saw a gorgeous looking structure. On paper, works for its realization were to accelerate for the projects to be a living reality. Glancing at the paper, it is evident there is still a long way to go. According to her, it is not a new phenomenon to see projects always initiated and abandoned by Cameroonian authorities. This municipal lake was a leisure and resort site. I am sure funds were already disbursed for works to commence. On this site, a 5-star hotel is to be constructed with a 36-month deadline, and also the first phase of the touristic and economic valorization of this lake. We dream to see our capital prestigious and beautiful like other capital cities. Visiting the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development for informations why this project is still in coma, we were redirected to the Yaoundé City Council, where the project is spearheaded by the technical team. Here, we were unable to get details. With the colonization of the site by wild grass, pedestrians risk being victims of attacks by hoodlums who often adore hiding in bushes waiting for their prey. Even before the project was initiated, corpses were often retrieved from the lake.
tué quand j'étais dans le lac.
With the tall grasses, insecurity will obviously rise.
Grandissant.
Nous sommes des étudiants de l'école normale.
As a student, from 5 p.m., we cannot pass here. We are afraid of aggression and even snake bites.
Il peut y avoir non seulement des serpents et même des gens qui peuvent nous agresser là.
A major expectation of inhabitants is for those responsible to get to work and finish what they initiated. The project on this site also previews construction of a classic restaurant of international standard and a leisure facility. Expectations of some Yaoundé denizens remains very high, while the government assures works will accelerate.
Beautifully presented, but no much work done 1 year after. It is better not to promise than to promise and fail to fulfill the promise. Yes, we got the 1 month notice, but the demolition exercise marks the very beginning of frustration to members of our different families. It is the cry of some inhabitants of the locality known as Marché de la Gare in the Nkululu neighborhood of the Douala Free municipality. Several of them have been rendered homeless in a large-scale demolition exercise. Our reporter Anna Bila in that parts of the city of Douala, who went detailedly and observed the demolition exercise, says that most of the people affected are those who ran away from the armed conflict in the English-speaking northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon.
Wailings, curses, anger and frustration here at Marché de la Gare in Kololun. Shops, stores and even houses are being brought down by bulldozers of the Douala 2 Council. Some merchants present are struggling to save what they can from the rubble from their shops or zinc sheets.
Je vais nourrir mes enfants avec quoi? Eh, Popol, tu as pitié de tes enfants? Est-ce que tu vois ça?
What do I feed my children with? Poor Bia, don't you have pity on your children? What do we feed them with? Schools will be resuming in 2 months. How do we get the school fees? We left the village to come hustle in Douala.
On va les inscrire avec quoi? On va les quitter au village pour venir chercher la vie à Douala. Nous voilà, on a tout cassé.
Puis on place parce que c'est qu'on nous chasse. C'est pour aller impacter où? C'est pour aller mourir dans l'eau. On va aller tous en aventure. Le mieux qu'on prend tout le Cameroun, partage l'argent.
It is a melancholic atmosphere here at Marché de la Gare in Kololun. Shops have been smashed and goods have been destroyed. Some of those who are badly affected here are those who came from the northwest and southwest regions. They ran away from the war thinking they were going to take refuge here in Douala.
I'm from Batibo, yes. I ran from the war and came here to hustle for my children because their father, I lost their father also when the war started. They shot him, so I could not stay there. I had to run and struggle for my children. Coming here to come and struggle also, now they've broken the place, we don't know where to go and how to start. So I don't even know how I'm going to do to feed the children. I've lost most of my customers. Per day I can sell more than 2 buckets of meter. But since morning, this is half bucket, I have not even sold it all. I wish if they could look for another place that can be equivalent for us to be there, and there is good. It can help us. Because I'm having a certificate, but I cannot go to school. Things are not going. So I don't know what to do for now. I'm confused.
Anti-riot police officers prevent looting and stop the aggrieved sellers from rebelling. Serge Dino laments that their family house, which has been standing for over a century here in Kololun, might be completely demolished.
Nous sommes surpris qu'ils viennent jusqu'à toucher notre maison qui a plus de 100 ans d'existence. Ils disent que la maison est dans l'emprise du marché.
We are surprised that they came and even touched our house, which has been here for over 100 years. They say the house is within the market premises. Since the days of Reshifeka, my grandfather used to sit here on the yard. They even started demolishing our house. It's because I opposed to it. They say they have given us 24 hours.
Ils ont même commencé à casser, c'est parce qu'on a fait opposition qu'ils ont laissé et ils disent qu'on a pour 24 heures.
We made a stop over at the Douala 2 Council to get reasons behind the demolition. We were told off camera that a better structure would soon be constructed and allocated to merchants whose makeshift stores were demolished.
substandard construction materials and the non-respect of construction norms have been blamed for the collapse of a story building under construction at the Dakar neighborhood of the Douala Free Municipality. Neighbors say that for 3 days they've had sleepless nights after they noticed cracks on the building under construction. Immaculate Fogo is the lady of that story.
Taintung, a resident of Pont Blanchisseur neighborhood in Dakar, Douala Tui subdivision, thanking God for sparing the life of her family members after she discovered the debris of a collapsed building in her room while they were sleeping in the parlor. A 3-floor story building still under construction has been giving those living around sleepless nights due to speculations of a future collapse. Since we started noticing that the building risked collapsing due to the cracks we saw on the walls, we decided to start sleeping in the parlor. While it was raining, I heard a loud noise, and when I rushed to the room, I saw that almost everything was destroyed. Those living around blame the collapse on the poor quality of building materials used and the negligence of the owner. It's been long that we have been complaining about the cracks found on the walls of the building. Imagine this did not happen at night. It would have been a catastrophic incident because the area where the wall collapsed, people used to sit around there to do house chores.
C'était pas dans la nuit. Si c'était en journée, ça devait être combien? 4 petits enfants. Ça devait...
Another victim explains that, though no one was hurt, enormous material damages were recorded as a result of the incident.
16 poulets, 5 heures, comme la pluie a commencé là.
16 of my birds that were in the cage have died. This is terrible. The victims plan going to the city council to report the situation at hand so as to avoid such disasters from reoccurring.
First day was another bad business day for dealers in illicit petroleum products across the city of Douala. Hundreds of thousands of illicit petrol, of liters of illicitly imported petroleum products were again confiscated by agents from the Ministry of Mines. Immaculate Fogo, rather Smatjikan Gebo, in the following report tells us that it was just day one and they are determined to go on for several days across neighborhoods in Douala, taking or confiscating containers and individuals responsible for the activity. His report.
Agents of the National Brigade for the Control of Petroleum Products in search of illicit fuel. From one container to another, the agents will go as long as destroying some of these containers. It was another operation that the National Brigade for the Control of Petroleum Products carried out in the economic capital of Cameroon, Douala, from the main road. These officials will move into the bush as they fight to limit the sale of illicit fuel along the roads in Douala. Being the first outing, the balance sheet wasn't clear. The quantity we have seized is not too much, since it is day one. So as we continue in the days ahead, we are going to have a better feedback. The seized products, as we were told, will have to go through thorough checks by experts in petroleum products before they will be sold. The seized products will be taken to the petroleum depot where it will be sold on auction after it must have been checked. Those who will be willing to buy will have to contact the petroleum depot company to purchase them. The fight against the sale of illicit fuel along the roads in Douala have been ongoing for several years now, but still it seems the business is gaining grounds. It's true that at first sight one still noticed the presence of this illicit sale of fuel products, but again we can say some of those who are old dealers have decided to stop the exercise to find something else doing, because from time to time When we go to some points, we notice that there is nothing.
Parce que de temps en temps, quand on se rend dans certains points de prélatage, on constate qu'il n'y a plus rien.
Agents of the National Brigade for the Control of Petroleum Products say the exercise will continue and their goal is to completely wipe out the sale of illicit fuel along the roads in the economic capital of Cameroon.
After accusing fingers from Kinshasa, accusing Kigali of sponsoring rebels of the M23 operating in North Kivu and the rest of Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, and his co from the Democratic Republic of Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, have met in a summit in Luanda, Angola, to discuss ways of de-escalating tensions between the two countries, but also the conflict in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. At the end of the meeting, there's so need for peace to reign in the Eastern DRC and consequently normalizing diplomatic ties between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Meanwhile, in South Africa, 21 teenagers who died in a nightclub have been buried. The ceremony took place in the presence of the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. A roundup of international news is with our lady Lucy Essier. We talk before sports, we talk international news, ladies and gentlemen, taking the report that talks about the normalizations of diplomatic ties or our future getting brighter on the diplomatic level between Kigali and Kinshasa after a meeting between Paul Kagame of Rwanda and his counterpart Felix Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of Congo. It should be recovered. For days, both countries have been on daggers drawn after accusing fingers from Kinshasa on Kigali, accusing Kigali of sponsoring rebels of M23 in North Kivu and the rest of Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo.
Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda have met in a one-day summit hosted in Angola's capital, Luanda, to de-escalate tensions which is plaguing Congo. Rwanda's counterparts Paul Kagame and Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi have met with the Angolan President Joao Lourenço to discuss the long-lasting solution to ensure peace in Congo. This which comes as a result of the defeat Congo had in 2013, where the March 23 Tutsi-dominated movement took arms at the end. As they say, the Democratic Republic of Congo authorities did not respect the agreement for the demobilization and reinstigation of its fighters. Thus, the attacks caused by March 23 has caused the death of dozens of civilians and displacement of more than 170,000 people. At the end of the Luanda tripartite summit, there was an agreed roadmap to de-escalate hostility that is between the Congolese army and the rebels. But to Congo, Rwanda is supporting the rebels. Angola's president, serving as mediator, terms the agreement as ceasefire. South Africa, more than a dozen grieving family and community members have attended a funeral of 21 teenagers who died in a mysterious tragedy at a nightclub 2 weeks ago. As the tent was filled to capacity, mourners sat outside while they sang some mournful hymns. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa gave an eulogy for the young who died. Their death remains a surprise to many as the cause is yet to be known. The young people aged between 13 and 17 all were under the legal drinking ages of 18 in South Africa. Pathologists are studying the cause of the death from blood samples.
Supporters of the Indomitable Lionesses of Cameroon are still to come to terms with the draw the Indomitable Lionesses had yesterday Wednesday with their counterparts or their opponents from Togo in West Africa. Zambia, on its part, has qualified from Group B to the next round of the competition of the ongoing Women's Africa Cup of Nations in the Northern African country of Morocco, while the chances for the Indomitable Lionesses of Cameroon getting to the next round of the competition get slain, as sportsman Simanjikan Gabriel tells us in the following report.
Supporters of Cameroon left the Mohamed Defeat Stadium of Morocco disappointed at the end of the game, which pitted the indomitable Lionesses against the women's Sparrowhawks of Togo. Ranked second in Africa, many of the supporters expected Cameroon to brush aside their day's opponent, ranked 16th in the continent and 118 in the world. But it was the women's Sparrowhawks of Togo that proved to be more tougher than Cameroon, as they opened scores at the 28th minute after an error from goalkeeper Ange Baou. Even though the lead lasted for 10 minutes, with Estelle Johnson heading a well-taken free kick by skipper Gabriela Budiongene to bring the score to 1-1, the remaining part of the game saw Cameroon missing so many scoring chances. As it stands, Cameroon's chances of crossing the first round are slim, knowing that they have a Tunisian side to confront in the last playing day of the group. The draw for Togo was historic because it was the first point they were collecting in the history of the Women's Africa Cup of Nations, in which they are the Blue Horns. In 2 matches already played, Cameroon has recorded 2 draws, scoring just 1 goal. In the other Group B match, Zambia scored at the last minute of their encounter against Tunisia to pick up all 3 points after losing a penalty in the earlier stage of the encounter. Zambia is the only team qualified from Group B at the moment with 4 points. Tunisia on 3 points needs a point to keep its place in Morocco, while the group is still open for Cameroon and Togo to finish on the 3rd place. Cameroon are one of the pre-tournament favorites, but defeat to Tunisia at the weekend could see them being eliminated from the competition in what will be a shock first round exit.
Meantime, Ivorian football legend DJ Drogba is now a PhD holder. The football legend, former captain and footballer of the Elephants of Côte d'Ivoire, was awarded a honorary degree at the Roseau, the Université des Sciences et Technologies des Pays d'Afrique, roster. The news has taken fans of DJ Drogba celebrating on social media. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with that sports information that I will put an end to the first part of this information. Coming up is Talking Point. Still. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we welcome you to the second segment of the news. We are on to Talking Point. And tonight we're having a historian as our guest. We shall be talking key historical issues, starting with the announced return of the significant Ngonso statue, that is of the Nsot Fondom in the northwest region of Cameroon. Tonight we're receiving Dr. Raymond Budi. Dr. Raymond Budi, he is a historian, and today we're going to be discussing key issues linked to that and others which were looted out of the African continent. We shall also be focusing on Cameroon during the same historical period. Dr. Budi Raymond, thanks for accepting our invitation. Hello, Dr. Budi Raymond. Thanks for accepting our invitation on Talking Point on Equinoxe.
Thank you very much, Armstrong, and thank you for having me. It's always an honor. Thank you indeed, and good evening, Cameroonians.
Yes, Dr. Njinti Raymond Budi, we're going to be starting with the first question. We have an announcement. It's celebrated within the Nsot Fondom, that is in the Bui division of the northwest region of Cameroon. The announced return of the princess, the founder of this important fondom in the grass fields of Cameroon, the Ngonso. What does this signify historically?
Thank you very much for this very important question. we all got it and we all celebrated. Just to say that it is not just the Nsor community that is celebrating, it is the entire grasslands of Cameroon, and of course the entire Cameroon celebrating this good news. That a very important cultural and historical artifact of the Nsor of the Bamenda grassland that was taken away sometimes in 1903 is said to be brought back very soon to regain its rightful place. It speaks of the resilience of the Nsor community. It speaks of the tenacity of the Nsor man. It also speaks of the determination by the Nsor to preserve their cultural and historical heritage. And of course, it sends a very important lesson to other communities that might also have lost important historical artifacts to begin to trace them to where they were taken to. And of course, initiate other similar measures, to get them back. This is because this artifact was taken within the framework of the Pavel expedition that was launched from Bamenda in 1902, and through which he passed, of course, within which context he passed through Nsor, Mbomlan, right up to Banyu. And it can be conjectured that wherever he stopped, artifacts were taken away. I think that it is important for communities to follow in the footsteps of this great move by the Nsor community, especially by the civil society movement led by Ms. Sivi and Jobati, to see that the artifacts they have lost are also returned.
All right, this important artifact we're talking about is that of Princess Nsor, but you rightly indicated that there are so many of these African important artifacts that were taken from the African continent, Cameroon to be precise, during the same historical period. In the course of your development, you made mention of the Pavel expedition that ran from Nsor through the Mbomlan and over to Banyo in the present-day Adamawa region of Cameroon. How much of these artifacts were taken during the same period that we should know about, apart from the Nsor, which is being expected in Cameroon?
In fact, Armstrong, it will be interesting for you to know that what the Nsor community has begun will just be the beginning of a very long struggle for the entire African continent. The statistics of African historical artifacts that are lodged in European museums and archives are frightening. They are scary to know. It would interest you to know that in Belgium alone, we have more than 180,000 historical artifacts from Africa. Of course, in the Humboldt Forum in Germany, we have more than 75,000. We don't want to talk about the Jacques Chirac Museum in France, which hosts not less than 70,000 of these artifacts. We're talking about the British Museum, which also hosts about 69,000 of these artifacts. And even in Austria that was not even a colony, in fact, that never boasted of, or that can boast of any colonies in Africa, even host some of its artifacts, numbering some 37,000. In the Jacques Chirac, museum alone in France, we have more than 7,838 historical artifacts from Cameroon alone. We have some from Madagascar, from Mali, from Gabon, from Congo-Brazzaville, from Senegal, and from Guinea, all lodged in France. So we are saying that what the Nsor community has begun should be, in fact, a feeling to the entire African community to rise up, to get back these artifacts. We are not just talking about pieces of wood, Armstrong. We are talking about a people's identity. We are talking about a people's history. We are talking about a people's definition in every sense of the word. We are not talking about some cowries put together. We are talking about something as significant as having spiritual connotation on the people. That is what we are talking about here.
Yes, with the Ngonsok being absent will actually mean that the very foundation of this important and this powerful fandom was absent. Thank God it's coming 120 years after most Nsok people have said this, even before the announcement of the information or the official announcement and acceptance of the Germans that they were getting it back to Cameroon. Doctor, you are an historian. What should we know as far as some of these things that were taken from other parts of Cameroon that might not have been documented?
I think that it is important for different communities to begin by finding out what their artifacts were and what were taken away. The most important thing about the return of Ngonsok to the Nsok community is the fact that they were able to know that Ngonsok was taken away. That is what made them to begin to trace it to where they found it in Germany, and then initiated actions that is resulting to the bringing back of this important artifact to the people. Communities in Cameroon, different communities, regrettably, may not know what was actually taken away from them. But I think that efforts should be made in this regard to first and foremost identify what artifacts were taken away. And when these artifacts are identified, they could be traced to which museums in Europe they are being lost, and then initiate similar actions to get them back. We have a very serious problem with our history because we take many things for granted, definitely. But the Nsok community is teaching us that they don't take everything or many things for granted. And just to say that the Nsok may not end the fight at this point or at this level, I want to challenge them to know that there are definitely more artifacts of that kingdom that are still found in different archives and museums in the West, and let the effort continue till the last artifact is brought back.
Doc, the Nsok case might have just been very lucky that it is coming at the time when the world is that is the globalization has taken center stage with the presence of the internet and many people getting consciousness. But Doc, you will agree with me that it is not the first of its kind in the grass field of Cameroon. We have the history of the return or the movement of the Afuakom, a strategic and important tool for the people of the Fondom, another first-class Fondom in the northwest region of Cameroon that moved out of Cameroon and then was brought back. What do we know, or what should we know as far as the movement and the return of Afuakom is concerned?
Yeah. Of course, that was another very spectacular action within the same context, the context of the return of important artifacts. And that is why the insistence is that let the effort continue and let more artifacts come back, because it speaks to the people's identity, it speaks to the people's history. And of course, it has a lot of significance. It will interest you to know that when you read the document that came out of the Prussian Cultural Heritage Foundation that decided to give back this important artifact to the Nsok community, it stated that the main reason, the strongest argument they are harping on is the fact that this artifact is of spiritual importance, spiritual significance to the people.
Very well.
And because it is of spiritual significance to the people, it has to go back to them. And I think it is important. We have most of these artifacts. Of course, the case of Afuakom, which you cited, is also very central. It has its place. It has spiritual significance to the people of Kom. Ngonsok is of spiritual significance to the people of Nsok. Many other artifacts, the thousands of them that are still found in different European museums and archives, are of spiritual significance to the people. Their absence is a big blow to the people's spiritual life, to the people's identity, and of course to the people's history. We need them back.
Doc, when you talk about efforts to be made, now I got you talking, citing the examples of the mobilization of the Nsor people who first of all understood that something was missing and went for it. Luckily, at the end of the day, they are coming out victorious. Now, in a case where the local people have little knowledge on what was stolen or was forcefully taken away from them during the same historical era, can the central government do something? Are you also expecting this effort to come in at the level of the government, or you are calling on the communities to look at the cultural significance, to go culturally, maybe to oral history, to be able to understand and get clearly what they missed during this period?
Yeah, thank you very well. I hope I got the question right. But I think that as far as Nsor is concerned, there is no Nsor individual that can isolate himself from the significance of this artifact to them. When something has spiritual connotation, when something has a historical and cultural connotation, it means that it touches on anybody that identifies with that community. Those educated and those uneducated, those at home and those abroad, all of them have a role. And that is why I'm particularly very interested in the case of the Nsor, where the fund has quickly intervened. You could see the fund quickly intervening, of course, to challenge the Nsor Cultural and Development Association to say, go ahead with the negotiation with the Prussian Cultural Heritage Foundation in Germany to see that eventually Nsor is back in the Nsor Kingdom. And this is very important, which means that every individual has a role to play, from the fund to the least person in the community, from the most intelligent, of course, the most educated, to the least educated. We all have a role to play to see that this monument, our monuments, are brought back to their pristine positions.
Dr. Budi Raymond Jinti, I came across a document on social media. The author cited as an important artifact that was taken from the Bamun dynasty during the same period. One that was taken from a locality in the west region of Cameroon, from a people, if I got it very well, it was the Bacham people in the west region of Cameroon. Now my question is, what can the central government do in order to help local communities who are showing interest in getting some of these things brought back to their areas for historical reasons? What can the government actually do in order to help? Are you advising that there be considerations towards creating a commission specifically charged with this mission?
This is very important. The government of Cameroon has a very direct role to play in the return of these artifacts to the different communities where they were taken. Of course, we have a Ministry of Arts and Culture. This ministry particularly should be engaged in the process. Of course, when I read the documents from the Prussian Cultural Heritage Center, I realized that it challenges the government of Cameroon to engage with them. I think the government should engage some diplomatic efforts to be able to negotiate some of these artifacts to come back. Because the history of Cameroon, there is no history of Cameroon without the history of the communities that make up Cameroon. So the history of Cameroon is a collection of different histories. And the history of Cameroon cannot be told without the history of the communities that make up this country. And so